is that within 3 years, and possibly sooner rather than later, that the new world will start operating their new currency, which is linked to 20 odd commodities, but those commodities are not priced in dollars. They are valued in grams of gold. I think it is very likely from my chats in this part of the world that it won't be long before oil is sold not in dollars, but in some other currency.
Hey everyone, it's Versan Aljarrah. I hope you're all doing well. It's Thursday, October the 7th. I want to give you a quick update on my current assessment of the global economy and digital assets. So I've been saying that the global economy is in free fall. I'd like to clarify what I mean when I say free fall. As central banks continue to inflate the debt market, it puts us in a situation where people have borrowed way too much money, expecting interest rates to stay low, so the debt would be manageable. However, with interest rates going up, because of the inflation from all the borrowing that we've done in the past, now they can't manage the debt. And this has been going on with central banks worldwide. So this is ultimately going to lead us towards a currency crisis here in the USA. As you can see in the chart below, all currencies are plummeting except for the dollar. And some would argue that the dollar is getting stronger. But yeah, it looks stronger. But why is this? It's simply getting stronger because other currencies are collapsing. And naturally, they are hedging themselves with US dollars, thus making it look stronger. However, the currency is being rapidly destroyed by inflation. Crisis is almost here, and we can see the signs everywhere. Just look at the mainstream propaganda news. Every major news outlet keeps pushing the narrative that we're in a global recession or a recession is looming, currency crisis, and as well as central banks adopting blockchain technology to their financial economic model. Sadly, we're going to live through this transition into a complete financial collapse of the debt-based system, and more importantly, the end game of fiat currencies, which means an end to your financial freedom and privacy.
Well, the International Monetary Fund has also declined to rule out a global recession.
Moving on, let's talk a bit about digital assets. So there is no real solution to this financial crisis without a massive currency devaluation and a monetary reset. And that's where blockchain plays a role. It levels out the monetary playing field to a system that does not allow governments to manipulate or inflate their currency, which means this would require a one world central bank and a new currency standard. I believe in time that governments will announce that we're simply back on a gold standard, and this will happen overnight, and these precious metals will be reevaluated at far higher prices.
So the question is, how do you set something up that takes the credit card away, but still allows governments to function? And if we went back to a gold standard, we'd have to do something like back the world's currencies with gold at a certain ratio that was clear and transparent and everybody could understand. The problem is to do that now with all the currency that's been created, you have to have a gold price that's really high compared to today. And the people who have run those numbers come up with estimates of anything from $10,000 an ounce for gold to $60,000 an ounce. So that would be very good for gold bugs. You know, the people who own gold and silver would make out, and the people who trust the government and own dollars would be devastated because their net worths would just crater. But we have to do something like that. And like you said, familiar ideas that are already on the table are what get adopted in times of panic, because you have to do something. The world is falling apart around you, and that's not a good time to learn about some new thing that you're going to implement. It's much easier to take something you already know how to do and just go back to that. And so there's a good chance we end up with something like a gold-backed currency going forward, something that's similar to the, in retrospect, familiar classical gold standard that was in place for basically 200 years before World War I.
Now, if this is the case, which it is, and I've done my research, central banks will have to use a digital asset that can easily bridge all banks and APIs to the network for interoperability. It would also have to be the most efficient and the most liquid asset. And that's exactly what Ripple has done with their digital asset XRP. If you've done your research, then you'll know that this is one of the most undervalued assets on the market. XRP will be the base currency for the new financial system. It will be backed by gold. And yeah, you could call it digital gold. Ripple is the only company that has global compliance from all major central banks and financial institutions. Right now, we're just waiting for the final classification of this digital asset and the court case to end. The lawsuit is bullshit. I've said this many times. It's just there until everything is in place, and it will move very swiftly, and they'll switch the new system on overnight. Globalization is the goal here, and that means being able to bank the unbanked, and only a bridge currency can meet that criteria, which is best described as XRP, a bridge currency.
This may be a breakaway from the dollar standard. And one thing that's very, very interesting about this administration that's different from others is for the first time, the US Treasury's talked about using SWIFT as a weapon. Now, SWIFT is essentially the way that you can trade dollars around the world. If you're cut off from SWIFT as a sovereign country, you're cut off from the dollar, and you need to find other ways of doing financing. Now, certainly, places like China now are doing an oil contract in Chinese currency. You've also have all of these central banks in emerging markets and in countries that are having difficulties with the US start to buy gold aggressively, and they're getting out of US treasuries. And so what you're seeing here is maybe this dollar standard that replaced the gold standard now slowly start to dissipate as the US starts to look at the dollar as being a weapon. Now this is and I can imagine in the next 5 years, instead of us doing sterling against the dollar or sterling against yen and doing these kinds of transactions, we'll do sterling versus Ripple. And the reason being, dollar right now is a 2-day settlement. With something like Ripple, you could do settlement in seconds. And I think that there's a future there where the guy that's trading spot FX today will be trading spot FX against Ripple in the future, in the next 2 or 3 years. So I think that Ripple has a great future because it's right now supported by all the banks and by all the regulators.
And it has an elastic monetary base, right?
So
Well,
if we take that and you go to the blockchain ledger, if you take that concept that you're discussing, I have no problem with it. I agree with it. But you're talking about money. You're talking about transaction, medium of exchange. There has to be something behind it, and that's where I'm going to pull this conversation back to gold. There has to be some sort of reserve asset. The problem with fiat currencies right now is that they can print as much as they want.